How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here, and today's video is slightly different from our usual World of Tanks console video in that we are playing on World of Tanks PC. Now, this is very interesting from my personal opinion. I picked up a PC recently in order to basically help with the YouTube channel and work on basically improving my setup and being able to maybe slot in a couple of World of Tanks PC games in, because my previous laptop just wasn't capable. Now, today's video we are focusing on the key differences between World of Tanks console and World of Tanks PC as a game, and I think I've played a decent amount on PC. You know, we've played about 500 games, being that I kind of know a little bit about World of Tanks from playing 20,000 battles on console plus, which means that, you know, some of the key aspects aren't necessarily too difficult for me to pick up, but there are a few things that I found kind of interesting in the slight variations between the two games. Now, in the background, we're playing in the Renegade. I picked this thing up for like £20 a while back on PC, so we could just basically earn some credits so that I can save up for the various different things throughout the tech trees. I'm currently playing the Cromwell as my actual tech tree tank, and that will be the first line that I go up, the Centurion Action X line. So, forgetting that, basically, back to the video. What is World of Tanks PC all about? Well, obviously, it's a much smoother gaming experience compared to the console version, which kind of offers this. It looks good until you actually play on a PC playing World of Tanks. It basically just blows it out the water in terms of what it actually graphically looks like in game, and of course that depends on your PC. If you're playing on a potato, then the PC version is going to be worse than your console, and I guess that's why people actually like the graphics on console, because maybe they don't have a PC, maybe they don't have £1,000 plus to spend on a PC that will run World of Tanks in Ultra, you know, at least in current day prices, because it's impossible to get your hands on a PC with a good graphics card, or at least pretty quickly anyway. Now, of course, we have to talk about the new player experience, and from a player that's basically got no real tanks in the game other than the premium tank on PC, then we've got to kind of talk about that. How have I actually found the first initial bit of gameplay? Well, of course, when you first start out, you haven't got any crews, so I basically had to train up all of the crews. I have been taking advantage of the Twitch Prime drops over the last year or so, where I just, you know, pick them up as soon as I see them, and sometimes you get some commanders rolled in with that. So the most recent one gave you a commander with 3 skills, I believe, that were already like predetermined, so you didn't actually get to pick them. They just give you a set of perks, and that has 6 cents and the various other essential perks that you'll really need to get off and to basically start the game well. So yeah, I think that the 6 cents obviously differs quite considerably from console, whereby on PC, obviously 6 cents takes that 2 seconds comparatively to on console, where 6 cents lights up immediately as soon as you get spotted. So as soon as someone can actually spot you in game, you already know that you are actually spotted. So that's the difference. It's instantaneous on console, whereas you've got a 2-second lag on PC, which I found was definitely something I need to get the hang of, because after playing so many games on console, you don't actually realise how annoying it is, or annoying it is when you don't have that instantaneous reaction. So that's something I need to get the hang of, and that's something I actually do kind of enjoy, because no longer can you kind of have to think in your brain, am I going to likely get spotted if you go into a different spot in the game, and that's something I do actually quite like. Although for the new player experience of someone who may not actually realise that they should be getting 6 cents, it probably makes it a ton worse for them, and I'm really hoping that I don't know, that I can get the hang of that a little bit more, so we can have some really good games on PC to actually show you in between the console versions, you know, videos that I will be making alongside. So we are basically going to be trying to not transition into PC content, but at least provide some PC content if I have a good game every now and again, and that might be interesting for you to see, because of course the core game mechanics that World of Tanks offer are pretty much the same. I have noticed, however, the one core difference in the game mechanics is I think the overmatching works slightly different on PC as it does to console. I think we only get partial overmatching on console compared to the actual overmatching on PC, whereby, you know, if your arm or if your tank caliber of the gun is actually 3 times higher, I believe, than the armor, then you will automatically pen it. Whereas on console, I don't think it works quite like that. So I know that it does in some cases, but I'm not entirely sure for definite anyway. Another thing that is really kind of annoying, I guess, about the PC version is that you do have this kind of silver apocalypse. On console, we complain when we, you know, lose 30,000 a battle. If you have a really stinker and you've been firing premium ammunition and you've got premium consumables, whereas on PC, the one problem I have with it is that you genuinely just don't earn very much silver. Even with a premium account playing in a premium tank, and you sometimes use, you know, your premium consumables, although for me, I don't actually run premium consumables yet because I just don't have the silver to spend on the premium consumables, which I guess puts me at a slight disadvantage. But it just genuinely feels like I can lose credits even playing a premium account without firing too much premium ammunition. And of course, I'm not having the best games in the world. Let's not beat around the bush. I have like a 53% win rate overall in the Renegade or something like that, 54% win rate. And I've played about 600 games on PC, so it's not particularly an amazing win rate. Better than probably maybe the average player that plays World of Tanks within their first 600 games if they're not a reroll. But of course I have played those games on console, and I guess that kind of helped me. But what I have noticed is, of course, there's not many tutorial systems within the game to actually teach you. Just like the console version, Wargaming don't tend to focus on actually trying to teach the player base, but it is slightly better than the console version because there are genuinely nothing to teach you about it on the console version, whereas there are a couple of things that kind of help you along the way with the PC version. So I guess with regards to this video, you know, the comparison of console and PC, then I would say that overall, as a better game, it probably has to be the World of Tanks PC. I'm not going to lie, because it just provides that kind of the better gameplay experience. You know, you can have much better frames per second, and genuinely, I didn't realise, but going back to console now after playing on a decent PC with World of Tanks on all ultra settings, it genuinely looks so bad. I wouldn't say it's like awful, but when you kind of have never actually experienced playing in that good graphic settings on World of Tanks, then yeah, it certainly looks a lot worse. I'm not telling you it's awful, but it certainly isn't the experience that I was used to, at least. So yeah, very, very interested as to kind of how PC's playing. Obviously, I've got a lot of work to do in order to get better at the game, because no one wants to see an absolute bot playing in the various tanks on YouTube. So don't be expecting loads of content. It will basically only be if I have a really good game. Other than that, I think, you know, with regards to this video in particular, you know, we've got a decent gameplay in the background. I think we picked up like 3,500 damage. Not particularly the best game in the Renegade, I guess, at tier 8. You know, that's not particularly an amazing game. You know, for me personally, at tier 8 on console, I'd be looking at something in the range of 5,000 to 6,000 damage as a good game to put onto YouTube. But, you know, looking at this is kind of, you have to take that step back, I guess, realise that you are playing on a completely new kind of mechanic game and learning all of the different maps. And trust me, the map diversity on PC is so nice compared to console, because obviously we've got the limited rotation right now on console, being that we have about 12 or 14 maps that you can possibly play. Bearing in mind some of them are limited to tier 6 and below, and some of them are limited from tier 6 to 8 or 6 to 10, and then there's some that are tier 8 to 10, and it just becomes this kind of, you're stuck playing the same kind of maps, whereas on PC there is so much more diversity. And if I was going to suggest which one I'd go for in terms of your gameplay experience and just enjoying the game a bit more, I would have to probably say to the PC version kind of wins that one. I would say, however, for the majority and the ease of access into playing World of Tanks on a decent kind of graphical setting without having to spend a ton of money, then of course the console version is kind of there as a backup. With regards to PC, I think it's more heavily monetized, and that's coming from a console player that knows that World of Tanks console is definitely heavily monetized with regards to all of the content, but there seems to be this kind of ongoing addition of microtransactions into World of Tanks PC, which I guess is something that most games are actually doing now. So we're not going to write Wargaming with this big branding saying that they just farm their player base with for their money, but of course it is a free game. They have to monetize it in some aspects, and I guess if they introduce new monetization content, then what they can do is farm all of the old players that have already purchased what they need to on the game, and then they can generate even more revenue as well as new players buying the content. So I get it from that kind of standpoint, but sometimes they take it a bit too far with regards to the new kind of systems coming into World of Tanks on the test server. If you haven't already seen some videos on it, then of course there's plenty of channels and you can have a look at that as to the new setup. I think it's to do with equipment, and basically you can swap out different things so that you're more varied on the map. At the beginning of the game you can swap equipment out to determine what you're going to do on the various different maps. So if you get a town map, you obviously don't need the coated optics, or at least in some kind of tank classes you might not need the coated optics because you'll be brawling within everyone's render range anyway, or view range. So yeah, I think that that's an interesting aspect. I think that the pricing of that is quite high, and that's definitely something that I've noticed between PC and console, is that the silver prices of everything on PC seem to be much higher. Now, I'm not saying that they're the biggest amount of silver prices I've ever seen, because console equipment tends to be more expensive. So if you want to purchase a piece of equipment on console, it basically costs you 500,000 silver, which is quite expensive. Let's not beat around the bush for any single piece of equipment. So that's 1.5 million to kit out your tank with equipment, compared to PC where they've kind of got this sliding scale as you go up through the tiers, the equipment changes or the equipment cost changes, which I prefer because it does make sense. The new players can actually get involved with using equipment, and so they're not as or it won't cost them as much, so they're not as deficient or lacking in certain areas of the game in terms of the core game mechanics. They can rival some of the more experienced players that maybe had way more silver than they needed, and they've just whacked on premium everything into their tank, so it makes them a little bit more competitive against players like that. Obviously, I think that games should have an advantage if you've been playing. Obviously, it's hard to not have that because people will have already grinded out the silver. But yeah, certainly the PC version of silver is really hard. And the last thing for this video is really talking about the content that PC versus console get. How often do each of the games or the game version of World of Tanks actually get some decent content? Well, that's kind of easy to say. Well, PC 100% get more content than console. That's just because it is a much bigger game. There is plenty more development teams within the PC version, so of course they're going to get more content, or at least more content faster than console do, and that's certainly something I'd like to see Wargaming console step up if they're going to do that. I doubt it now because they've seen what their development has actually done, and we're back down at a player base lower or the same as last year at the lowest point. So yeah, all of the updates that they've done, basically it's all led to the same kind of point whereby we've got the same amount of players nearly as previously at the lowest point last year. So yeah, that's not particularly great, and I think that PC is actually kind of staying relatively maintained in their player base. Obviously, as stuff or lockdown restrictions ease, the players in numbers are going to go down each week because people are getting out and doing more things, and of course everyone's going to be wanting to go on holiday. But yeah, I think that that's something everyone needs to note down and realise that of course some changes are going to be affected by obviously real world stuff, and you have to take that into account as well. But as you can see by the player bases on console versus PC, well, PC has about 10 times more players than console, and they're averaging probably like 80,000 people online on the European servers, so EU1 and EU2, compared to like the on console in all of the servers combined, it's like 20,000 maximum. So yeah, you've got certainly a lot more players playing on the PC version, which of course is probably because that's where the game first came out and that's where it's more widely available to everyone within the world. So yeah, very interested to see what your thoughts are on the console versus PC argument for World of Tanks, and of course leave that in the comment section down below. We'll get a discussion going and I'm very interested to see what you think. Obviously, make sure to check out some of the other content that I have on the channel. There are a few kind of videos that should generally help out PC players as well. So if you are a PC player of World of Tanks, then be sure to check some of those videos out. There will be linked at the end of this video. So those kind of videos where they actually could be used for both. But other than that, if you are a console player and some of my subscribers, then of course you know where to go. There's plenty of videos on the channel if you want to have a look at that. And of course, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Goodbye.